A Christmas Carol. Now, of course, we did Christmas Carol last week. But that was Muppet Christmas Carol and had songs in it. This is A Christmas Carol from 1951 and has no songs in it. Well, technically it does have songs in it, but they're public domain songs. And no one sings them that we can see. And its original title was not A Christmas Carol. It was, in fact, Scrooge. And it is a British movie. Released in 1951. Starring Alastair Sim as Scrooge. I don't know any of the other actors in this movie except for Alastair Sim. Now, it starts out with them pulling out a book and people singing. Don't worry, they are not in the book. They did not trap people in the book just to make them sing. Like, they're supposed to only trap people in the books who have a good purpose, or if they're demons. And we see the original title, Scrooge. And then we go to the movie, where Scrooge is seen leaving a business where he does business. Not his place of business, but another business where he does business. And we know, we are told that Marley is dead. That will be a common theme at the beginning of many of these Christmas carols, is that Marley is dead. He is alive in this movie, though, in scenes. But at the beginning of this one, he is dead. And Scrooge is a man who owes Scrooge money, catches up with him when he was leaving this business, and Scrooge tells the man to pretty much fuck off. He'll see him in debtor's prison, or he'll pay him the money. Because that's the kind of man Scrooge is. And then we see a blind man's dog run away from Scrooge, carrying the blind man with him. I don't know how the dog sensed he was an evil person, but the dog did. Then Scrooge goes to his place of office, where he is visited by the two men who are asking for money for Christmas, charity for Christmas. And we see that scene. And they don't leave calling him Scrooge in a derogatory term. They just leave. We don't see them again in this movie, though. And we see his nephew come to visit him. And he just leaves too. And then we see Scrooge go home. And we do see a scene of Tiny Tim before Scrooge goes home, who is not so tiny. He is actually Tall Tim in this movie. He is a giant, as big as houses, and he likes to stomp on people and hit them with his crutch. Now, Scrooge goes home and sees Jacob Marley in the doorknob, as in every Scrooge movie. But we do see when he makes it to the fireplace that the bells that are ringing are not connected to anything. That is something we actually get to see in this movie. And then Marley makes his way to Scrooge, and they have their little conversation. Alastair Sim's facial movements are absolutely great in this movie. And Marley is clearly played by a Shakespearean actor, and you can tell because of the way he acts. He is doing Shakespeare all the way, just over the top Shakespeare all the way in this movie. all the way during his ghost scene. He's doing over the top Shakespeare. I mean, he is just chewing all the scenery. You might as well just grab a wall and just start gnawing at it. He's chewing the scenery so good. But Marley eventually leaves, and Scrooge is left to meet the ghost of Christmas past, who is not a young child or something with flames on his head. He is an old man, probably older than Scrooge. I think this is the only Scrooge movie where the ghost of Christmas past is an old man, because the ghost of Christmas past is not supposed to be an old man. Unless you make him some sort of old Indian spirit walker or something. But we see more of Scrooge's past in this movie than we see in any other Scrooge movie I've watched. Now, I have not seen FX's Christmas Carol yet. So we'll watch that next week and see if we get a bunch of Scrooge's past in it. We actually spend a great deal of the first hour going through the beginning where we see Marley and them and the Ghost of Christmas Past. That'll end at like 50 minutes. That's only an hour and a half movie. So we see Scrooge as a child in the schoolhouse, and Fanny, his sister, comes and gets him from the schoolhouse, which is actually an important scene. Why, I'm at 10 minutes already? No, I'm at 8 minutes. I'm kind of rambling today. And then we see him go to work, and then we see him at Fezziwigs and Love. And then we see him go to work for a guy besides Fezziwig, who was trying to buy Fezziwigs, but offered Scrooge money after Fezziwig turned him down. And then we see that's how he meets Marley, is how he goes to work for this company. And then we see the guy bought Fezziwigs and ran Fezziwig out of business. And Scrooge starts to get greedy. And then we see Fanny die. And Scrooge turns away from that family and just goes to ignore his nephew, though Fanny wanted, we see after Scrooge left the room, Fanny wanted Scrooge to take care of Fred. So Scrooge is bawling his eyes out at that. Then we see Alice, who is his girlfriend in this movie. Why they didn't call her Belle, I don't know. Her name is Belle. Her name's always been Belle. But in this movie, they call her Alice, because apparently she's going through a wonderland. But Alice leaves Scrooge. And then we see Scrooge and Marley take over the company, because the guy who put the company together, it was embezzling funds the whole time. And so Scrooge and Marley have the money to save it, and they get 51% of the stock. And then we see Marley on his deathbed, where Scrooge visits him, and Marley says, "Still time," and points to Scrooge. And then he says, "Wrong." And then he points to Scrooge and says, "Save yourself." None of which Scrooge listens to. And that was 7 years ago when Marley died, though I thought it was only 5. So time flies when Marley dies. So we see all that in Scrooge's past. So it's actually quite interesting to watch all of Scrooge's past fly by, because you see a lot of it. Then we go to Christmas Present, which is kind of rushed. Same as the Ghost Christmas Future, because like I said, there's only about a half hour left in this movie. And he goes and sees Bob Cratchit, and he sees Tiny Tim, and we don't spend a whole lot of time with them. But we see Tiny Tim's actually almost taller than all of his brothers and sisters, and almost taller than his parents. And I said he's a giant. He's Giant Tim, with a crutch used to kill trespassers. And then we see he goes to his nephews, and his nephew is dancing. They don't play games in this movie. They dance. Because dancing is great. I wish there were river dancing. River dancing was the greatest thing in the 90s. If you don't know what river dance is, look it up. It was great. Everybody river danced in the 90s. And it was not dancing on a river. So that would be really cool if we could dance on a river. I'd just dance my way down a river and go somewhere. But anyways. And then we see what Alice is doing now. And then it goes to Christmas present, introduces them to the two kids, Ignorance and Want. And then he disappears, not even telling them about Ghost Christmas Future. But Scrooge takes off running through the streets for and meets. And then we see, what's the first thing we see with the ghost? Oh yeah, Johnny Tim's dead. And then we see them selling his stuff that they stole. And then we see, not only they're selling his stuff that he stole, but the businessmen are like, I'm glad he's dead. Pretty much regular Ghost of Christmas Future stuff. But his tombstone, he does not wipe away the snow and reveal his name. Ghost of Christmas Future points to it, and he looks at it, and it's on the ground, and he falls on it, and he like breaks out crying, and then he grabs Ghost of Christmas Future and goes, I want to change. So through the whole rest of the movie, he's like, I'm too old to change. And don't worry, I'm too old to make change too. That's why I like working at companies that have a changer. Those big things can't change for you. I like working at companies that have those. And then he's back in real life, and he's dancing around, and he scares the hell out of his maid, and she's going to go call the doctor and have him locked up, but then he pays her, and she's fine with it. And then he orders the turkey for Bob Cratchit and sends it to Bob Cratchit's house. Then he goes to his nephews and he dances with them. Didn't mean to burp there. And then he sees Bob Cratchit next day at work, tells him he's late, and then tells him he's going to raise his salary and help him raise his family. And that is the end of Scrooge. That took a little bit longer than I thought it would. Next week, we're looking at FX's Christmas Carol, which is close to 3 hours long. I don't think they're going to rush anything. But on the wrestling show, we're looking at Mick Foley's anti-hardcore character in ECW. So join me next week.